Hi everyone, welcome back. So in the last lesson we produced this map of oil rents as a percentage of GDP using World Bank data and country shapes from our natural earth. So what happens if you want to make another map like this, but maybe you want to change a color scheme, or maybe you want the scale to go from light to dark rather than dark to light, or you just want to change out the variable. You just want to have a different indicator there. Rather than rewriting the code every time, if you know you're going to be making the same map over and over again, one thing you can do is to turn the map into a function. And then, like all the functions we've been using throughout the course associated with various packages, you can use your function to build the map and just insert arguments into the function, okay? And that's what we're going to be doing in this lesson. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll call this section of our code along document turn your map into a function. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to first of all build our function. And in the function, we want everything in there that that we need in order to make the map, and that includes loading all the packages and everything really. So you want it to be self-contained. That way, when it's called, it works. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we can write some text in here. Let's build a function, and then we'll start our code chunk. All right, we'll label it map function. So one thing I want to do here before we get started is I want to add an option in our code chunk. I want to do eval is false, set eval to false, and what that does essentially is it means that the code will print out when we render the document, but it won't evaluate the code. And the reason I don't want to evaluate the code is because we want the code to come from, you'll see, we're going to store the code in an R script. We're going to store that in a folder, and then we're going to call the function as a helper function with some additional code. We're going to use a source function to source the code from another file. So I don't want it to evaluate here. Okay, that's why I'm setting eval to false. All right, so okay, so let's get started with writing our function. So first thing we'll do is we'll load all of our packages. So our natural earth, dplyr, ggplot2, ggthemes, and wbstats. Okay, now we're going to create our function. So a function basically has three elements. The first is the name. The second is the function call, where you insert your arguments. And the third is curly braces, which contains the block of code that you want to execute. All right. So the name for this is going to be create_map, and then our function is going to include the following arguments. We're actually going to have a number of them here. It's a little bit of a complicated function. So variable ID, that's the first argument, is what variable do we want to call for the map, the title of the map, the title of the legend of the map, legend title, theme, yeah, that should, theme, and then the direction of the color scale, and I'll show you how this works later, but basically light to dark or dark to light. So that's a little bit fancy, but it'll be cool to be able to control that. All right, so then we put our curly braces, then we hit enter, and now we are building the code for our actual map. So we're going to take any countries, first thing we're going to do, and we're going to say scale equals medium. So all of this should look familiar. I'm just going to type it out again here though. Return class equals SF, so that's the simple features we want. Then from there, we're going to do our left join, and we're going to join these, the natural earth country shapes with our World Bank data. So we're going to go World Bank underscore data, and here we're putting in the argument, the name of the argument for the country code that we want to call here. All right, MRNEV equals 1. So this is going to be our country code, and then we're specifying that for every map that we make. This is not going to change. We're always going to take the most recent non-missing value. Okay. Then we're going to do a join by. We're going to do to specify. We're going to use the join by function now to specify which ISO codes we are joining by, and this should look familiar to you. So we talked about this before. And then from there, we need to filter out Antarctica. I should say Antarctica. Never know what to do with that C there. Okay. Okay, and we're just piping all of that into our ggplot function. So we don't have to actually put anything about the data in our ggplot function. And we're going to specify our aesthetic here. This is a little bit different than the way we usually do it, but we're going to just specify our aesthetic here in the geom_sf function. So our fill is going to be the variable ID that we're specifying. But here's the thing, we're going to have to put our country code in quotation marks to enter them into the function. And so now we have to find a way to strip out those quotation marks. Okay, so we're going to do this, eval parse text equals var ID. Okay, and that is going to remove the quotes. All right, that's what that line of code is doing there. All right. And then from there, we are going to add our labels. This is a comment. From there, we're going to add our labels. Title equals. Now here, we're not going to type out the title. We're going to enter our argument title. We're going to enter that into the function when we call the function. So we just want to say title equals title to change the title. Fill, same thing with fill, equals legend title. And then caption, this is always going to be the same. So we can just write source World Bank development indicators. Okay. Okay, and that is our labels, and then from there we're going to add theme map from GG Themes. And then from there we're going to do a few things to the theme. We're going to say that the plot, like before, the plot title should be bold. Actually, since it's one element, let's just put it on one line. We're only doing that, so we'll just do that. And then from there, we will add a Viridis _C And of course, this won't work if we have a discrete variable rather than a continuous variable. So we have to make sure that we're only doing continuous variables here with this function. But most of them are, so that should be okay. Option equals theme. And then direction equals direction. Okay. Okay, we're not going to run this. I just wanted to show you how it's done. What we're going to do is we're going to save this in a script over here in functions. I already have it saved from a previous iteration, but I'll go ahead and... So we're going to save it. We're going to make a file. You should make a file in your modules folder. And you can do that by doing create new folder here. I've already done it, but create new folder and create a folder called functions. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we are going to do new file, and this time we're going to do our script. And then we're going to take our code here for our function. And we're not going to take the code chunks, we're just going to take the code and we're going to put it in that script and we're going to save it as something. We're going to save it in functions. And then we're going to say that this is World Bank map function.r. Okay. Alright, so now it's saved over here in our functions folder. And so now we can close out of that. Okay, so now the next step is going to be to use the function. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say, now let's call our function. And the first thing we have to do is we have to have a code chunk that is going to source the function and make it available to us in our document when we're rendering it. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say source functions, and then we want the name of our function. And let's go ahead and yes, I was forgetting what we called it. wb-map-function. So wb.map.function.r. Okay, so that's our R helper script that we're going to use to call our function. And then we need this bit of code here too. Local equals knit_r knit global. Okay. All right. And so now let's use our function. Our function is called createMap, and we call it just like any other function we would use. This var id equals, and let's call female labor force participation like we've done in the past. sl.tlf.cact.fe.zs. All right, and then from there we can do title, female labor force participation, legend title, FLFP %. That's what we want our legend to say. Theme, and we'll select the Inferno theme. And then direction equals, and we'll say -1, so it goes from light to dark, so meaning that higher values are shaded with darker colors. Okay. All right. Oh, and we forgot to add a code chunk here. I got very excited to call our function, and I didn't add the code chunk. All right, so let's put that in here. Let's call this FLFP map, and then it looks like we're missing parentheses here. Anything else? Oh, okay, so now let's run the source here. And now let's run this. See if it works. Oh, it didn't like something. Oh, I keep misspelling legend. Let's try it again. Okay, and there we have it, our map of female labor force participation. And note that we didn't run this, okay? So it doesn't know anything about that, right? It's all coming from our source code over here that we saved in this file, okay? That's super useful if you've got to, do the same thing over and over again, make a bunch of maps in a document, or if you want to use a map in an RShiny app like we're going to be doing later on. This is a super useful skill to know. Okay, so now let's say we want to do something else entirely, and let's say, so we'll add another code chunk here, and we'll just do a quick World Bank search for GDP per capita to see what kind of data available the World Bank has for GDP per capita. And the one that I think we should use is this one down here, GDP per capita PPP constant 2017 international dollars. Okay, and let's take our code chunk up here and add another code chunk down here. We'll copy what we had before in terms of our function. You have to retype everything. But we will have to change a lot because we're calling something else. So now we're going to do GDP map. And let's copy this here. And insert it here. All right, and let's call this GDP per capita. Constant 2017 international dollars. And let's have our legend title say Giri Camus dollars. That's essentially what the measure is here. All right, and then let's change the theme this time to Mako or Mako, and we'll leave the direction as -1, and let's go ahead and run it. And there we go. And that looks right, doesn't it? Like wealthy countries are darker, and poorer countries are lighter. We could reverse that. Like I said, this direction parameter here is if we want to reverse the color scheme. Okay, looks completely different, doesn't it? But you get the idea. All right, so that's it. That's how you turn your map into a function, your choropleth map into a function, and that's the end of this module. In the next module, we're going to be talking about leaflet maps. See you there.